would say we built it twice. And you're going to see incredible numbers start coming in if everything is sort of left alone. Be careful. Very complex. Be careful. But you're going to see some incredible things happening. And remember us when you see these things happening. If you would remember us, because I'm looking at elements of our economy that are said to be a rocket ship up. It's a rocket ship up. We have the greatest country in the world. We have the greatest economy in the world. And as bad as the pandemic was, we were hit so hard, just like the entire world was hit so hard. Places that thought they got away with it didn't get away with it. They're suffering right now. We did something that is really considered a medical miracle. They're calling it a miracle, and that was the vaccine. We got the vaccine developed in 9 months instead of 9 years or 5 years or 10 years or a long time. It was supposed to take a long time, many, many years to develop a vaccine. We have 2 out. We have another one coming almost immediately, and it really is a great achievement. So you should start to see really good numbers over the next few months. I think you're going to see those numbers really skyrocket downward. And I can only say this, we have worked hard. We've left it all, as the athletes would say, we've left it all in the field. We don't have to come and say, we'll never say in a month when we're sitting in Florida, we're not going to be looking at each other and saying, you know, if we only worked a little bit harder. You can't work harder. And we had a lot of obstacles, and we went through the obstacles. And we just got 75 million votes, and that's a record in the history of sitting presidents. That's an all-time record by a lot, by many millions. In the history of sitting presidents, it's been really just an honor. One of the things we're very, very proud of is the selection of almost 300 federal judges and 3 great Supreme Court justices. That's a very big number. That's a record-setting number. And so we've done a lot, and there's still things to do. First thing we have to do is pay our respects and our love to the incredible people and families who suffered so gravely from the China virus. It's a horrible thing that was put onto the world. We all know where it came from, but it's a horrible, horrible thing. So be very careful. Be very, very careful. But we want to pay great love to all of the people that have suffered, including families who have suffered so gravely. So with that, I just want to say you are amazing people. This is a great, great country. It is my greatest honor and privilege to have been your president. I will always fight for you. I will be watching, I will be listening, and I will tell you that the future of this country has never been better. I wish the new administration great luck and great success. I think they'll have great success. They have the foundation to do something really spectacular. And again, we put it in a position like it's never been before, despite the worst plague to hit since, I guess you'd say 1917, over 100 years ago. And despite that, the things that we've done have been just incredible, and I couldn't have done it without you. So just a goodbye. We love you. We will be back in some form. And again, I want to just, in leaving, I want to thank our Vice President, Mike Pence, and Karen. I want to thank Congress because we really worked well with Congress, at least certain elements of Congress. But we really did. We've gotten so much done that nobody thought would be possible. But I do want to thank Congress. And I want to thank all of the great people of Washington, D.C., all of the people that we worked with to put this miracle together. So, have a good life. We will see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And listening live as President Trump gives his final address to his proud supporters there at Joint Base Andrews, about to get on to Air Force One and his final trip on that plane as president. At noon today, his presidency ends, and he will be flying into Palm Beach, Florida, which will be his new home and a base of operations for what he says to be back in some form. Just to talk about some of the things that he touched on in his speech here, he wanted to highlight what he sees as his greatest accomplishments, even though he said he faced obstacles unlike any other president before him. He talked about rebuilding the military, getting tax reform passed, cutting regulations to fire up the economy and get businesses moving. There you see some of his family, Laura Trump, Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, and their families. Some of them will be moving to Florida as well. He talked about getting the vaccine in record time, how they did in months what normally takes years and years, and how that is going to be the key to defeating COVID-19, which had such a terrible impact on our country and terrible impact on his presidency. He talked about how great the economy was prior to COVID-19. One last wave goodbye to the crowd here. He's going back over, trying to see who that is. His Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows. Now he's getting onto the plane to fly to Florida. But you heard the crowd chanting, "We love you," and "Thank you, Trump," and cheering wildly when he said, "We're going to be back." He talked about 75 million people who voted for him. His supporters love this president. No doubt some people voted and didn't like, we've heard feedback over the years, they didn't like the Twitter, they didn't like the tone sometimes, they didn't like the way he talked sometimes, but they liked his results. And that is why they voted for him again in 2020, 75 million people. He did wish, this is the closest we have heard President Trump come to good wishes for President-elect Joe Biden. He said, "We wish the new administration great luck and great success, and we believe that they will have it because the president's saying, I laid a foundation for that with the economy. Get the virus under control, and the economy foundations are there." Let's bring in our Josh Robin again from Washington, D.C. as we continue to watch live until Air Force One takes off here. Josh, he is leaving behind a Washington, D.C. that is entering now the post-Trump era. And not only does the president-elect, Joe Biden, have to deal with a deeply divided nation, and many who do not believe that he's a legitimate president. I mean, we've said over and over and over again how courts have rejected that. But in many ways, we know that perception is reality, because if that's the way that these supporters feel, and a great deal of them feel that way, well, that's their perception, and that is their reality. And the president-elect is going to have to deal with that if he wants to unify this country. Is this impeachment trial, which is pending, the House has already impeached the president. It still has to be sent over to the Senate, and there's a lot of wrangling right now as to what that's going to look like, when that's going to happen, how a trial would take place. President-elect Biden has said his top priority is to unify the government. One word from him to leadership to not continue an impeachment trial, because it will further divide the country, would stop that from happening. And Republicans, including Lindsey Graham, are calling for that. not to take place because an impeachment is only going to further divide this country. What do you expect the guidance from the president-elect to be when it comes to this pending impeachment?
That he is going to really defer to Congress. And look, there are going to be elements that will never accept this election, and there will be Trump supporters in Congress. And as the president said, just as he was closing, the current president, we will be back in some form. So Trump or Trumpism will still be a force in American politics. But we also have to remember that there is a growing, I would say, movement within the Republican Party to try to excise Donald Trump. And we see that most notably from someone who will remain the leader of the Republican minority, that is Mitch McConnell. And he yesterday said something very striking, the strongest he had been on this. He said that the incitement came from the president, that it was provoked by the president. So if it weren't for that riot 2 weeks ago today, it's quite possible that President Trump's power would persist longer within the country. If I may say one other thing just to that era, it was really striking to me, Holly. Perhaps the most striking thing was when he said about the coronavirus. He called it the China virus. Be careful, be very, very careful, he said, speaking about the effects of this pandemic, which has killed 400,000 people. And this is, looking in the past, and historians are going to do this. If in January, February, he had leveled with the American people and said what physicians and public health experts were surely telling him, as we've heard from reporting since, that this is dangerous, this is highly contagious, that we're not prepared for it, and so on, might we be here talking, Holly, you and I, at the second inauguration of Donald Trump, if he had told people to wear masks, if he had said, look, the economy is going to take a hit, but we're going to rebound, maybe Joe Biden wouldn't have had that in. As you mentioned, 75 million people voted for Donald Trump. It's quite possible that even with the very strong feelings against him, if he had become more of a cheerleader for truth and for science and saying, we're going to get through this together, maybe Donald Trump would be the one taking the oath of office on that dais. We'll never know, but it certainly is interesting to think about.
It is, because once that happened with the pandemic, and you look back at all that has happened since, as we take a live look here now at the White House also, and around D.C., you do have to wonder how things may have been different had coronavirus never hit on so many levels. How things may have been different for our country, but also for President Trump, because he did have accomplishments that were very, very popular within the party, even the party who initially weren't too thrilled to have President Trump as their leader. I can recall being at Mar-a-Lago prior to 2016, prior to the election, and then House Speaker Paul Ryan, who was, the leader of the Republican Party at that point. 2 days before the election, Paul Ryan came out and really bashed President Trump, and I can remember reporting, here we are 2 days out from an election, and the top Republican in D.C. is bashing the Republican nominee. That is what this president came into. He did face obstacles, unlike many other presidents have had to face, including within his own party. And you mentioned, it's almost like it's being bookend now. He faced that red wall of the establishment within his own party because he is such an outsider coming in, and it would appear he's facing it to a degree going out. You mentioned Mitch McConnell on the Senate floor yesterday when the Senate reconvened, saying this riot mob was provoked, he said, by Trump, which is, of course, the allegation of the impeachment article against him. And he talked about the supporters of Trump saying they were, quote, fed lies. And he also asserted, though, that there was no broad mandate by either party in 2020, and that is where Mitch McConnell will try to manage the margins, so to speak. And you're taking a live look now. We'll get back to that conversation in just a moment. We want to look now. This is where President-elect Joe Biden is arriving at the church service. He is at St. Matthew's Catholic Church, along with House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, who during the day of impeachment voted against impeachment, the top Republican in the House, but also said he felt like the president did bear some responsibility for what had happened during that riot. You'll also have here House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is attending this church service. Chuck Schumer, soon to be the majority leader, and also Mitch McConnell is here at this church service. President-elect Biden is a man of deep Catholic faith, and this church is a historical church. The president-elect will be the second Catholic to be elected president. The first, of course, John Kennedy, and this is actually where Jacqueline Kennedy held President Kennedy's funeral mass after he was assassinated. And they are holding mass here today prior to the inauguration of Joe Biden. And we have been saying all along, and you can't overstate it, just how different this particular inauguration is for reasons relating to the pandemic and also just the extraordinary circumstances that we find ourselves in politically right now. So you've got on the left side of your screen the outgoing president, and on the right side of your screen that is the motorcade for the incoming president as he heads to church prior to his inauguration today, where he will take the oath of office along with Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. You see the crowd of supporters there out on the tarmac at Joint Base Andrews, waiting for Air Force One to take off. Listening, the plane is pulling off, so it is headed to Palm Beach. Let's head over to our Angie Andrews, who is there in Palm Beach and has been reporting and talking to the president's supporters about how they're feeling right now. And Angie, he talked about his 75 million voters. He told them, we will be back in some form. I'm not sure anybody knows quite yet what to expect that means. But what have you heard from his supporters who maybe feel like those who have criticized this president over the years, and particularly laying blame at his feet for what happened at the Capitol on the 6th, who maybe these supporters might feel like they have been painted with too broad of a brush, that there's a lunatic fringe to every movement, and to sort of be painted as everyone who supports the president is a bigot, is a racist, is a white supremacist, feeling that they're being ostracized right now because of what happened. How are they feeling about the events of the past couple of weeks?
Holly, I'm really glad you asked that question. I asked a very similar question to actually a group of supporters that's right over here to my side just a couple of minutes ago, who were watching President Trump's speech on the live stream, and they said they loved that he said, "We love you and we'll see you soon." Again, that's kind of cryptic. We don't know what that means. But these particular supporters told me that today they feel is a really sad day for them. They also feel like they've been ostracized and looked at in a bad light, when in reality they said they just love their president and they love the work he's done when it comes to policy, when it came to tax cuts. One particular person said when it came to abortion, there were many different policies that they just really respect what he's done, and they want to say thank you. And that's something I heard from every supporter I talked to. Said, why are you out here in the sun? Why are you out here for hours beforehand, in large groups, to be honest? Not particularly safe for anyone at this matter. And they said he needs to know how much he's loved, and they want to just say thank you for what he's done, and they believe that that's the welcome that he deserves around noontime today when he drives into Mar-a-Lago. So that's what I've been hearing on and off, Holly. We know that they are getting ready for him to be here. I would say at this point, just looking around, I can probably count about 20 or so supporters out here. Those I spoke to yesterday said they'd be out here right around 9:30. So I think by the next time that we check in, it's going to be a much different picture here by the time that Trump comes driving down Southern Boulevard. I mean, I think we're going to see almost that same energy that we just saw at his final speech with, the I love you and, the yelling, because that's what the group here I've spoken to says that they're planning to do as soon as they see that motorcade start.
And they'll be doing that greeting and then that a welcome to Florida about the same time that the president-elect will be inaugurated. Angie, thank you for that. I know you'll be watching as that happens. Let's go back now and continue talking to Josh here about the day ahead as we are watching Air Force One get ready to take off last time the president will be on Air Force One as he heads to Florida and leaves Washington, D.C. Mitch McConnell, Josh, who is with the president-elect right now, also said yesterday that no party, neither party, Democrat or Republican, was given a broad mandate in 2020. That's going to be an ongoing theme that we're going to see in Washington, D.C. How do you expect this new day dawning in Washington, D.C. To go? I mean, this president-elect has a big agenda ahead of him. He wants to get immigration reform right away. He's got almost a $2 trillion COVID-19 stimulus plan. How is D.C. going to govern?
That's a very good question, and I should note, I think, Holly, I'm 99.9% sure that as this plane is departing, we were hearing the soundtrack, which was Frank Sinatra's My Way, a wonderful song. I just thought that it was interesting color to note. Look, the Senate will be divided 50-50. It will be divided 50-50 as of, I believe it's going to be either later today or tomorrow. It hasn't been publicly released when the two winners of the recent runoff in Georgia, John Ossoff and the Reverend Raphael Warnock, are going to be sworn in. At that point, if there's any tie, like who will be the leader, Kamala Harris, who will in a little bit less than 3 hours will be the vice president, will be able to break that tie as president of the Senate. It is not a broad mandate for either party, that's true. In the House, actually, Republicans have gained seats, and Nancy Pelosi only recently was reelected as House Speaker by a narrow majority. So there's going to have to be compromise for sure. What's also interesting, and this gets back to what we were speaking about before, is that the Republican Party is split, and we'll have to see if there's going to be compromises for Democrats, or if there's going to be more of a towing the line to staying more of an obstructionist party.
All right, Josh, as you're talking here, we're just watching as the president flies away to Mar-a-Lago on Air Force One. And yes, you're absolutely right. You pointed out that Frank Sinatra's My Way was playing as that happened. No doubt that was by design, and that was a song that we've heard at countless rallies before the president would come out and take the stage. That's a song that he identifies with, and one thing that whether you are completely against this president or you support him 100%, he did do things his way, for the better or for the worse, depending on how you look at it. And the fact is, in this country, is you have two groups of people who look at that question very differently. How did the president govern? What does he leave behind? You know, we are a shining light of democracy to the world. We always have been that shining light on a hill to hold up the values of democracy. And unfortunately, right now, that capital, the nation's capital, is locked down and secure. We're going to see an inauguration today, unlike any we have ever seen before, in many ways, and in terms of the security right now, to keep people out are not going to be able to attend, and it's going to be a visual reminder today of the divisions that exist in our country. We will be following it all for you live here on Spectrum News. We invite you to join us again at 11 o'clock when we start our special coverage of the inauguration of Joe Biden. Stick with your local channel. We will have our team of experts throughout the day, starting at 11 a.m. on this very historic Inauguration Day.
Snow across the northern half of the state as we had some snow showers develop yesterday throughout the overnight hours, but finally seeing a lot of that taper on off this morning. And as we head toward the afternoon, some of us further south are going to get lucky, seeing a better chance for some sunshine and clouds thinning out, especially for areas across southern Ohio. Doesn't matter where you are throughout the state today, it will be a cold day, and this is pretty much our big weather story as we head throughout your Wednesday afternoon. Most of us are going to be dry for today, a little cloudier further north, and we'll have a better
better chance for some of those clearing skies further south. But temperatures from north to south, it is cold. Most of us right now still only in the 20s, and because of winds are out of the northwest direction, we've got wind chills as low as the teens to 20s. And this is the number you want to pay attention to even as we head toward the afternoon, because again, it will be a cold day. We are going to be tracking those wind chills pretty much in the teens and 20s all afternoon long. I'm going to break down more of your local forecast coming up and your next weather on the ones. Thank you, Robin. Here's a look at your Wednesday morning headlines. The Ohio Department of Job and Family Services is now issuing $300 payments to eligible unemployment claimants following a new system programming update. The distribution is made possible by the Federal Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021. Claimants will receive 11 weeks of supplemental weekly payments. Those payments will be retroactive to December 27, 2020, to ensure all eligible claimants will receive their full compensation benefits. To see if you're eligible and for further updates, you can visit jfs.ohio.gov/CAA. 96% of Ohio's public school districts are agreeing to return to buildings at least partially by March 1st. This according to Governor Mike DeWine. Governor DeWine saying that date is contingent on school districts being supplied with coronavirus vaccine doses. The projected timeline for vaccinations to begin for school staff is February 1st. Governor DeWine says schools can work with local health departments for vaccine administration or find a partnership through working with the state. Ohioans will now have the opportunity to remain an active voter under a more secure and accurate registration system. Secretary of State Frank LaRose directed County Board of Elections to remove abandoned registrations out of the voter rolls. The voter list maintenance process is required under state and federal laws. Residents could end up on the abandoned list due to multiple registrations, not canceling an original registration because of a recent move or death of a registrant. LaRose says this new initiative will help prevent fraud and help strengthen the confidence placed in the state's elections. And those are your Wednesday morning headlines. Today is Inauguration Day. President-elect Joe Biden is scheduled to be sworn in as the 46th President of the United States this afternoon. This coming as President Donald Trump addresses the nation one last time as president. Our Torian Small joins us from the nation's capital with more. Torian?
Yeah, Sophia, it was a much shallower crowd than the president expected to address on his way out.